Whatever you are doing right now, stop. What I am about to say is not for everyone listening. It is for you. You have been carrying something quietly for longer than you admit, and the weight of it has become so familiar that you almost call it normal. But it is not normal to wake with that pressure in your chest and still force yourself through the day as if nothing is happening. It is not normal to smile when people look at you and then go home carrying a silence that has no name. It is not normal to keep saying in the private place inside you, "I should be further by now," and then to swallow the sentence before anyone can hear it. I came because that hidden ache has been seen. By the end of this message, you are going to recognize the signs that have been circling your life with unnerving precision. You're going to understand why the same pattern keeps trying to pull you back into old disappointment. And you are going to hear a declaration spoken over you that does not flatter you, does not entertain you, and does not leave you where you began. Stay with me, because what is coming is not vague, and it is not random. You did not arrive here by accident. You did not wander into this hearing as one more passing moment among thousands of passing moments. There are words that come by schedule, and there are words that come by appointment, and this one came by appointment. It reached you because something in you has already begun to open, even if you have not had the courage to call it that yet. It reached you because heaven does not shout when it is near. It recognizes what is ready. It reached you because the part of you that has been waiting in the dark was finally willing to hear its own name, spoken clearly. Something has been happening to you, and the strangest part is that you have not always known how to explain it. You have felt it in ordinary places, while washing a cup, while sitting in traffic, while standing alone in the kitchen after everyone else has gone to sleep. You have felt it in the body before you ever found language for it. A tightness, a pause, a quiet pressure around the heart that is not pain exactly, but also is not peace. And because you could not name it, you tried to ignore it. Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment. You tried to ignore it, but what is meant for you does not disappear because you look away. There have been mornings when you wake at the same hour again and again, almost as if your sleep itself is being tapped on the shoulder. You open your eyes before sunrise, before your alarm, before the world has decided to become noisy, and for a few seconds you lie there with a strange alertness in your body. Your mind reaches for reasons, but there are none that satisfy you. You tell yourself, "I am just tired." You tell yourself, "It means nothing." But your body does not agree. Your body is already listening to something deeper, and that is why the same hour keeps returning like a whisper that refuses to be dismissed. There have been moments when an emotion rises without permission and seems larger than the scene in front of you. You are doing something simple, folding clothes, driving, answering a message, and suddenly the inside of you swells with a sadness or a longing that does not match the moment. Then just as suddenly it passes, leaving you standing in the middle of your own life with the strange thought, "Why did that feel so strong?" You may have even said, "I am overreacting." You may have said, "I do not know what is wrong with me." But what if nothing is wrong with you? And what if the feeling is not a failure but a signal? There have been conversations that used to define you, but now they feel thin in your mouth. Old explanations no longer fit. Old agreements no longer hold warmth. A sentence you once believed now sounds like someone else's memory, not yours. You hear people repeat the words they always repeat, and something in you quietly steps back. You do not necessarily become angry. You simply become aware. And in that awareness, there is a small grief, because you can feel the distance between who you were when you accepted those words and who you are becoming now. That distance is holy, even if it feels lonely. There have been repeated patterns of numbers, timing, arrivals and delays that seem too specific to ignore. A message at the exact moment you were thinking of someone, a receipt, a clock, a street sign, a phrase repeated by different mouths on different days. You notice the same thing twice, then 3 times, then enough times that your spirit begins to lean forward before your mind can catch up. You say, maybe I am imagining it. But the repetition does not leave. It keeps speaking until you admit that your life is being touched by a language deeper than coincidence. These signs are not punishment. They are not confusion. They are not proof that something is breaking in you. They are confirmations. They are the soft but persistent way God interrupts the numbness that would have kept you asleep. The repeated hour means you are being called to notice your life again. The emotional wave means something buried is rising to be healed, not hidden. The conversations that no longer fit mean you have outgrown a room you once begged to enter. The repeating numbers mean attention is being gathered, not scattered. You are not losing your mind. You are being brought back to awareness. Take a breath with me. Let your shoulders settle for one moment. There is no need to rush past what is already true. If even one of those signs has been landing in you, if your body has been answering before your thoughts can organize themselves, type the number 888 in the comments. 888 is the language of overflow, the sign that what has been withheld is not lost. Type 888, then come back to me. But there is something beneath these signs, and this is where the message begins to deepen. Beneath the repeated hour, beneath the waves of feeling, beneath the hollowed-out conversations and the strange timing, there is one single pattern that has been trying to shape the way you receive everything. It is a pattern that does not shout. It does not announce itself in obvious cruelty. It arrives dressed like caution, like self-protection, like maturity, like being realistic. That is why it has stayed so long. It sounds responsible while quietly teaching your heart to expect less than it was created for. The pattern is this. You learn to brace before you learn to receive. You learn to prepare for disappointment before you learn to trust arrival. You learn to lower your expectations so that life could not wound you as deeply. And at first that looked wise. It looked careful. It looked like strength. But over time, what began as protection became a posture, and that posture began to shape every room you entered. You started arriving before blessings with your hands already half closed. You can see this pattern in small places if you are honest. Someone offers warmth, and you wait for the part where it turns. A door opens a little, and you assume it will close before you reach it. A good moment appears, and you instinctively measure how long it will last, instead of allowing yourself to live inside it. Even your prayers can begin to carry this shadow. You ask, but only halfway. You hope, but only safely. You reach, but with one foot already ready to retreat. And after a while, the pattern starts sounding like your personality, yet it was never a flaw in your soul. It was never proof that you are difficult, broken, or less chosen than others. It was a response. It was learned. It was formed in places where your heart had to make sense of absence, delay, inconsistency, or silence. You did what you had to do to survive disappointment. You became cautious because caution felt safer than longing. You became measured because being fully open once cost you too much. So do not curse the armor too quickly. It once protected you, but what protected you then is now constraining you here. And this is why the cost has been so quiet and so heavy. When you stay inside this pattern too long, you begin to misread gifts as threats and timing as rejection. You begin to think that what is delayed is denied. You begin to call yourself forgotten when you're actually being repositioned. You begin to live with a low-grade grief that never fully names itself because part of you has already decided not to expect more. That is the silent cost. Not only the things you do not receive, but the way your spirit learns to stand with its shoulders turned inward. Stay with me, because there is a layer beneath this one. I see it like a courtyard that once held music. Picture a wide inner place, open to the sky, built to receive sun and laughter and movement. It was meant to be alive with footsteps, with voices crossing, with life moving freely through it. But over time, something changed. A gate was left half closed. Dust settled where people used to gather. The benches went unused. The fountain stopped sounding like a fountain and began to sound like memory. The courtyard remained, but its life did not feel available anymore. That is what has happened inside you, in ways you could not easily describe. Long ago, before you had the language to question it, something formed around that courtyard. Maybe it was a repeated absence. Maybe it was a harsh word spoken when you were open. Maybe it was the shock of being seen and then overlooked. Maybe it was the way you were praised for being strong but not held when you were tired. Whatever the exact shape, the courtyard learned to expect less traffic. It learned to wait quietly. It learned to keep its center protected. And because it was honored for surviving, no one noticed that survival had slowly replaced welcome. Over time, the courtyard began to harden at the edges. The places that should have welcomed movement became controlled. The spaces meant for shared life became monitored. You started checking the weather of every encounter before you let yourself step fully into it. You started listening for signs of what might go wrong before you could hear what was actually present. The courtyard did not become empty all at once. It became cautious one season at a time. That is how deep formation works. It rarely arrives as destruction. It arrives as gradual dimming. And the dimming was especially cruel because it made you think the problem was your desire itself. You began to wonder whether wanting deeply was the issue, whether hoping openly was naive, whether the part of you that longs for restoration, tenderness and certainty is somehow too much. But the courtyard was never wrong for wanting light. It was never wrong for wanting to be used again. It was never wrong for wanting the fountain to sound like living water instead of memory. The desire was not the injury. The injury was the long season in which desire had to wait alone. Then something begins to happen in the image, not instantly, not dramatically, but enough to notice. A crack in the stone does not mean collapse. Sometimes it means breath is entering again. The gate that had been half closed begins to move. Not because you forced it, not because you proved yourself worthy by striving. It moves because what is alive does not stay buried forever. The fountain remembers its own shape. The courtyard begins to hear footsteps again. What looked sealed starts to respond to presence, and you begin to understand that the life inside you was never dead. It was only waiting for permission to be received. Let that settle into the part of you that has waited longest to hear it. If something inside you just sealed, if that courtyard image landed in a place you cannot fully explain, type the words "I see it" in the comments. Let the recognition seal where it just landed. Type it, then come back to me. What returns is not a performance, it is a homecoming. The answer is not that you must become someone else in order to live differently. The answer is that you return to the part of you that was never meant to live behind a gate, that was only ever temporary. You do not need to manufacture a new spirit. You do not need to force a new identity. You need to receive what was interrupted and tend it with new steadiness. You need to let the inner courtyard be a place of welcome again. This is why the solution is not a list of frantic actions. It is not a campaign of self-improvement. It is a return. You are not being asked to earn what has already begun moving toward you. You are not being asked to become more impressive so that heaven will finally notice you. You are being invited to stand where you are and receive without shrinking. There are moments when the holiest thing you can do is stop bracing long enough to feel what has arrived. That is not passivity. That is trust becoming visible. You will notice that when you stop bracing, the whole atmosphere inside you changes. You stop interpreting every delay as a verdict. You stop treating every silence as a closed door. You stop assuming that the next disappointment has already been written. Instead, you begin to recognize the difference between a closed season and an unworthy identity. That difference matters. A season can change, a posture can soften, a gate can open, but shame will try to convince you that the condition is permanent. It is not. There is a practice for this kind of return, and it is simple enough to be overlooked. When you wake, before you reach for the noise of the day, sit for a moment and name what is actually present without trying to edit it. Not what you think should be present. What is present? The tension in the chest, the impatience in the jaw, the place where hope and fear are still touching. Then say quietly, I do not have to brace before I arrive. Say it as a correction, not as a slogan. Let your body hear the sentence before your mind argues with it. There is another practice, and it is equally plain. At the end of the day, do not review your life as if you are prosecuting it. Review it as if you are tending a courtyard after weather has passed through. Ask where the light touched you. Ask where you felt yourself close. Ask where you became smaller than you needed to be. Ask where you said, it means nothing, when in truth it meant something you were not yet ready to name. This is not overthinking, this is stewardship. You are learning to notice what lives within you without condemning it. The more you tend this way, the more you discover that what you needed was never more pressure. It was presence. It was a way of keeping watch without panic. A way of standing inside your own life without treating every movement as danger. A way of becoming a faithful keeper of the courtyard instead of a frightened guard at its gate. And once you understand that, even ordinary things begin to change. The way you answer a message, the way you enter a room, the way you pray, the way you wait, all of it starts to soften. This is not the language of striving, it is the language of guardianship. You are not forcing fruit. You are keeping the ground ready. You are not trying to conjure a miracle. You are learning how to recognize one when it arrives and not shut the gate on it by habit. That is a sacred skill. That is what the next season is asking of you. If the gate in that courtyard has begun to move for you, let the words I am awake be the phrase you type now. Not as a hope, as a witness. Let what has been sealed in you know that you have heard it. There is a quiet difference between receiving and striving, and your life is being taught that difference now. Receiving breathes, striving clenches, receiving notices, striving controls. Receiving lets the gift be a gift. Striving asks the gift to prove itself before it can be trusted. And because you have lived for so long in the language of control, receiving may feel exposed at first. But exposure is not the same as danger. Sometimes it is only the first honest light you have allowed into a room that was built in shadow. So walk gently with yourself. Do not grab at what is moving toward you as if it might flee. Do not interrogate every blessing until it becomes exhausted. Do not make your healing perform for your fear. Let things come near you without demanding they arrive already explained. You do not have to understand everything to honor what is happening. You only have to remain present long enough for truth to finish speaking. And because presence can be learned, you can practice it in small ways. When a good moment appears, do not immediately reach for the next worry. Stay in the moment long enough to name it. When peace touches you briefly, do not accuse it of being temporary before it has even settled. Let it remain. When kindness comes toward you, do not flinch away from it so quickly that your own heart misses the encounter. This is how the return deepens. Not through dramatic effort, but through repeated, faithful staying. I need you to know that you are not behind in the way you fear. You are not spiritually late. You are not disqualified because the path has taken longer than you wanted. You are being taught how to inhabit arrival without panic. That lesson is worth more than hurry. That lesson will hold what hurry would have shattered, and once that is settled in you, everything changes shape. If even one of these sentences has confirmed what your spirit already knew, let your like be your amen without words, not as a metric, as an agreement that what was named here was named correctly. Sit with that for a moment. Do not rush past it. There is something in your life that already knew this was true before your mind caught up. Someone came to mind while I was speaking. It may be someone quietly tired, someone carrying more than they admit, someone holding a posture of strength that very few people ever see. It may be someone who has been waiting in silence, someone who has become cautious because hope has hurt them before, someone whose face arrived in your thoughts without being invited. That is not random. Send this to them, not as a recommendation, as a delivery, the same way it was delivered to you tonight by appointment. Before this closes, type the words, "I am chosen," in the comments. Not as a wish. Not as a hope, as a confirmation. The agreement that has been forming between heaven and your hearing belongs to the season you are walking into now. Type it slowly. Let your fingers do what your spirit is already doing. Let your heart be steadied. Let your breath be gathered. Let the part of you that has been waiting in the courtyard feel the ground beneath it again. You are confirmed. You are gathered. You are not forgotten. You are being restored in the place where you once learned to brace. You are being met in the place where you once learned to hide. You are being carried into a season that does not require you to shrink in order to enter. Right now, all across the world, others are receiving this same recognition in their own quiet places. They are listening with the same private ache, the same hidden hope, the same unexpected relief. You are not alone in this hearing. You are part of a work that does not need noise to be real, and that is why it can hold you without breaking you. It is sealed. You have arrived at the part that does not hurry. You have arrived at the part where the inner noise begins to lower its voice, not because everything is solved in a single breath, but because something truer than panic has entered the room and has taken its place without forcing anyone out. This is the place where your spirit stops running to the edge of every thought, and where your heart, if it is willing, begins to learn a slower mercy. You do not need to prove anything here. You do not need to explain why the ache has lasted so long. You only need to remain, because what is being sealed in you does not come through effort first. It comes through recognition. For a long time you thought your greatest task was to become stronger, when the deeper invitation was to become more available. Stronger would have meant harder. Available means honest. Stronger would have meant guarded. Available means open enough to receive what was already moving toward you. You can feel the difference in your body when those words touch the right place. One tightens the jaw, one loosens the chest, one makes the shoulders rise, one lets them fall. And the reason this matters now is because the next season of your life does not ask for more armor, it asks for more agreement. Agreement is quieter than striving, but it is more powerful than it looks. Agreement is the hand unclenching at the exact moment fear expected it to stay closed. Agreement is the breath that stops fighting the moment and begins to live inside it. Agreement is the inner yes that does not need to be loud to be real. And because you have spent so long in the habit of resisting good news, even good news may arrive to you at first as a strange and fragile thing. Handle it gently. Let it be real before you demand it be permanent. Let it stand before you interrogate it. There is a kind of fatigue that does not come from too much work. It comes from too much expectation carried alone. You have been doing the unseen labor of anticipating outcomes, managing disappointment, rehearsing your own disappointment, and then acting as if none of that has touched you. That kind of labor drains the soul in ways other people rarely notice. Your hands still function, your schedule still moves, your face still appears in the right places, but inside, a part of you has been holding a door shut for so long that even rest can feel suspicious. That is why this moment matters. The door does not have to be forced. It only has to be trusted. Trust is not naivety. Trust is not denial. Trust is not pretending that pain never taught you anything. Trust is what remains after pain has taught you, and you are no longer required to worship what hurt you. There is a difference between wisdom and fear wearing the same clothing. Wisdom says, I have learned. Fear says, I must never open again. Wisdom helps you discern. Fear builds permanent fences around temporary seasons. And you, beloved, have lived long enough inside temporary fences. You have mistaken them for your boundary when they were only your defense. So the return becomes simple in a way that may feel almost too simple. You return to the place in you that still knows how to recognize life when it comes near. You return to the place that still feels the quiet pull of truth before language arrives. You return to the place that does not need everything explained in order to bow in peace. That place has been there all along. It has not vanished. It has not failed. It has been waiting under the weight of your caution, waiting for the day when your heart would be tired enough to stop performing and honest enough to receive. And here is what you do not need to do anymore. You do not need to earn tenderness by exhausting yourself. You do not need to build a case for why you deserve peace. You do not need to convince the heavens that your longing is valid. You do not need to become more useful before you become more held. What you receive now is not a wage. It is not a trophy. It is not a reward for being exceptional. It is a restoration of what was always meant to live around you and within you. That is why it comes as relief before it comes as explanation. You may notice, as this settles in, that some of the old urgency begins to lose its grip. The urgency that said you had to force the opening. The urgency that said if you were not constantly pushing, nothing would happen. The urgency that said every delay was a sign of abandonment. That urgency has been loud for years, and yet it has not once made you more at peace. It only made you more reactive. It made your prayer feel like pressure. It made your waiting feel like punishment. It made your hope feel like work. This is not how you were meant to live. Hope was never meant to be a strain. So let the strain be named as strain. Let the control be named as control. Let the bracing be named as bracing. Naming is not condemnation. It is release. It gives the truth a shape. And once truth has a shape, it can be seen. And once it can be seen, it can be left behind where it belongs. That is what this hour is doing in you. It is not asking you to deny the old way. It is asking you to stop confusing the old way with your identity. There is a steadier way to move through the rest of this season, and it begins with reverence for what is already present. When you sit in silence now, do not immediately fill the silence with verdicts. When you wake at night, do not immediately conclude that unrest is all there is. When a feeling rises, do not rush to exile it. Let it speak long enough to reveal whether it is grief, anticipation, or the memory of disappointment trying to masquerade as prophecy. Your inner life becomes easier to carry when every sensation is not given the authority to define you. One of the quiet miracles of this return is that it restores proportion. The thing that once felt enormous begins to show its true size. The fear that sounded like fact reveals itself as a habit. The pressure that seemed permanent turns out to be seasonal. The hesitation that felt like wisdom is finally seen as caution learned too young. Proportion is mercy. It lets you stop building shrines around every passing storm. It lets you stand in the room without being ruled by the weather in it. It lets you remember that the sky above you is larger than the cloud that briefly covered it. And when proportion returns, presence becomes possible again. You stop living one step ahead of yourself. You stop rehearsing catastrophe while a blessing is still unfolding. Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you. And strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.